I absolutely have to talk about what I think is the most exciting new video game studio out there right now, who, without even showing a second of gameplay publicly, has me so unbelievably amped about whatever it is they happen to be working on. And they also just raised $31 million, so let's get into it. Hello and welcome back to Wavelengths. It's still a show about video game news. I am still Brendan Bigley, and today I have to talk about the new studio, Gardens, who continues to show off unbelievable concept art for their, as far as we know, untitled upcoming video game. Gardens first popped up on my radar, I want to say in 2021-ish, when they posted some job listings alongside some art from an artist who I really like, who goes by Mako, who I've been following for a while based on some of their Legend of Zelda inspired art, but generally just their like high fantasy, overgrown, very green, earthy, foresty, like beautiful work. I just think Mako is a really exciting artist, and seeing that they were working with this game studio on concept art for their new project was really exciting to me. I think one of the things to know about Gardens, and one of the things that gets me so excited outside of just the art itself, is that the team is comprised of people who make the kinds of games that I personally really love to play. You have members of the teams behind games like What Remains of Edith Finch, Journey, Replaceable, believe it or not, Dust Force, which is an incredible side-scrolling, platforming, speedrunning adjacent game with one of, I think, the best soundtracks ever in video games. Sky, Children of Light, Marvel's Spider-Man, Ashen, Outer Wilds, like the list just goes on and on and on. I think the thing that ties a lot of those games in particular together for me is this sense of place and experimentation and the vibe that you're gonna lose yourself in these spaces. And it's for different reasons with each one, right? You have games like What Remains of Edith Finch, which are just about, creating this beautiful narrative in this beautiful space. You have games like Replaceable on like the entire opposite end of the spectrum, which is about losing yourself in the community, losing yourself in the experience of playing with other people. And I feel like the perfect halfway point between those two is Journey. Even something like Marvel's Spider-Man, which is obviously a huge AAA experience. Actually, I should probably just mention, hi, I work for Marvel Entertainment. Nothing I say and do reflects the views of my employer, even though I'm about to praise Marvel's Spider-Man, a very good video game. Anyway, even though that was like a big AAA experience, Marvel's Spider-Man, I think, is so notable for creating this almost larger-than-life comic booky version of New York City. The way the lighting worked, so you had these like really, really beautiful vistas and sunsets and sunrises, the way the night looked, the game feel of swinging through that space, really immersed yourself in the feeling of the Spider-Man universe. Each of those games, I think, represents a different like high point of excellence for what's possible in a video game. And knowing that all of those people are putting their brains together to make something that they think is new and something that they think is exciting is exciting to me. Before raising all of that money, the team has been prototyping different game ideas for about like 2-ish years to try and figure out something that they feel super strongly about before they go out and try and raise capital. And based on this great interview the CEO just did with a website called 80 Level, the game that they're working on is being described as, and I quote, an online PvPvE fantasy action-adventure sandbox RPG, which is a whole mouthful. But when you hear their CEO, Chris Bell, go a little bit more in depth as to what all of that means, I think the idea is really enticing. They describe in this interview moments of playing Final Fantasy XI and watching the rain fall down and meeting somebody else who is also standing under an underhang, and the two of them just sat there and watched the rain together for a while. They talk about moments playing World of Warcraft where you're fighting way too many enemies at once all by yourself and a healer rushes in and saves you at the last moment. And they talk about building a video game that allows for those kinds of moments to happen more frequently by design. Moments where you feel immersed, moments where you feel like you're building that sense of community. If you're a person who listens to my other podcast, Into the Aether, you probably know that I'm a person who loves photo mode and who loves to take my time when playing any game. I think there are games that are just so good at eliciting this sense of immersion, essentially just like transmitting into your brain the exact emotion that they want you to be feeling in certain spaces at certain times. And to know that there's a whole studio of people who are setting out to create a game built around just that idea is so cool. On top of that, to know that the concept art that Mako is creating is also going to be the blueprint for the actual art style of the game. It's not just a concept art situation. That is what they want the game to look like. Is also, I mean, the art's amazing. The art's going to be so pretty. One of the reasons I followed Mako in the first place was just like, man, I want to live in this art. I just want to experience whatever it is that the people in those pieces are experiencing. Knowing that that's going to be possible, like, man, that's a dream come true. According to this interview, they had a prototype that they showed off at GDC, and apparently the reactions have been, wow, this feels like something Fumito Ueda would have made. Fumito Ueda was the lead developer of games like Ico and Shadow of the Colossus and The Last Guardian, which I think is maybe the highest praise you can give any video game. Because when I'm sitting here talking about all those things that I love in video games, there is no single studio that gets that better than Team Ico. And look, there is no timeline for what Gardens is working on. It could be 3 years, it could be 5 years, it could be 10 years before whatever they make is actually released. But I am so excited to see what it is. Shout out to the team over there. I'm ready, man. I'm so ready. Up next, an interesting piece of news I keep seeing reported on is that Blizzard is apparently going to start bringing some of its games to Steam, so they won't require the Battle.net launcher to play. The caveat, of course, being that you'll still need a Battle.net account to play those games, but hypothetically, you'd be able to log into Battle.net from the actual game instead of needing to launch the Battle.net launcher and then launch the game and then sign into the game. I have to imagine this move is in relation to the Microsoft acquisition of Activision Blizzard, which seems more and more likely to go through worldwide, not even just in the States where it is going through. Microsoft seems to be bending over backwards to make sure that they're not labeled a monopoly because of this acquisition, and I have to assume that this move is so they can be like, oh, don't worry, we're releasing some of our biggest games. Debatable with Overwatch 2, definitely, but we're releasing some of our biggest games on Steam and not on, for example, the Windows App Store or just through Game Pass to make sure that they're available to everybody. See, gamers have a choice, etc., etc. I will say, as somebody who has a Steam Deck and is playing Diablo 4 on that Steam Deck, the experience of getting that game running took way longer and was way more complicated than it should have been. So there is a piece of me that's like, yeah, I'm happy about this. Like, that's cool. I think it'll be nice to just download Diablo 4, log into my account, and then play it normally. Because the game runs really well on the Steam Deck, it's just the process of launching it every single time is so weird. That said, the only game that they've announced to be launching on Steam so far is Overwatch 2, and I'm hoping that there are more coming down the line. I'm wondering if this will also come hand in hand with the removal of the Battle.net launcher in its entirety. That launcher has been such a staple of PC gaming for so long, it feels like as long as Steam has been around, and I can't see it just going away entirely. I wonder if there's going to be a middle ground where, like, say you're logging in to play World of Warcraft, there's a way to, like, tab open to see the Battle.net experience. But either way, I'm excited to see what other games end up launching here. I imagine, just to be clear, I imagine all of those games, everything that's available on the Battle.net launcher will end up in Game Pass, either on console or on PC Game Pass, pretty soon after that acquisition happens. But for the time being, slowly pushing all this stuff to Steam really feels like Microsoft trying to be like, we just really don't want to get in trouble, you know? And speaking of things that are definitely going to hit Game Pass as soon as that merger goes through, apparently all of the Xbox 360 versions of Call of Duty recently had their servers fixed. And big Call of Duty fans have tracked down that it was indeed Microsoft that fixed those servers and put them back online. So now people are flooding back into those games. Games like the original Modern Warfare 2, and Black Ops and things like that are like filled with people again for the first time in years. And to me, that really does just feel like preparation for those games hitting Game Pass. And I will say, as somebody who enjoyed Call of Duty 4 when that first came out, and Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, and at least the first Black Ops, and even, what was it, World at War? Was that one of them? I think that was one of them. I think I liked that one, but has since fallen off with Call of Duty. Yeah, I'll play those games again. When they hit Game Pass, absolutely. I'm always looking for like the one first-person shooter that I'm just going to have on rotation, and the idea of going back to Call of Duty 4 seems really funny to me. Not even the remastered version that they eventually released, but just the original for the Xbox 360. That would be really fun. Two more stories I just want to breeze through real quick. Jeff Grubb mentioned on one of his podcasts that apparently Metroid Prime 2 is going to be released relatively soon for the Nintendo Switch. I don't know when that means, but I have a hunch that I'll get to in a second. And that also something Zelda-related that is not Tears of the Kingdom is going to happen at some point this year, which to me sounds like, knowing his history with shouting out that Wind Waker and Twilight Princess are coming to Switch, feels to me like he doesn't want to say that specifically, which I totally understand, because as soon as he says that and then it doesn't come true, people are just going to like show up in his mentions being like, dude, you lied. It's like, come on. But it does feel like those games have been imminent for a long time. I mean, there's reporting going all the way back to like around when the Switch came out that Nintendo had ports of those two games like ready to go, and they've just been sitting on the shelf for a while, which is also something that we know Nintendo does based on the Metroid Prime 1 remaster. That game has reportedly been done for like 2 years and was just sitting there waiting to be released for like a kind of empty slate, an empty spot in Nintendo's lineup. And it is a little frustrating to know that I could have been playing Switch ports of Wind Waker and Twilight Princess for years at this point, but I'll just be happy to get them when I get them. On the Metroid Prime 2 for Switch coming relatively soon, I'm curious to see if there's going to be some kind of like August or September event. Specifically, the thing that's really sticking out to me is that the Tokyo Game Show is still happening this year in kind of like late September, and it feels like the kind of place where Nintendo would probably announce something if they wanted to have a kind of towards the end of the year direct. I know it feels like we just had one, but like, we could still have another one. Or Nintendo also is in this realm where they're just releasing stuff via tweets. Maybe they'll just tweet Metroid Prime 2 out now. It's worth remembering, at least based on the reporting that's been done about that game, that it's not going to be a full-scale remaster like the original Metroid Prime, but still, having Metroid Prime 2 Echoes available on the Switch is a positive, no matter what. Speaking of which, I just got a copy for GameCube. Just in time. But the reason I'm starting to think there's going to be a bunch of announcements towards the end of September, probably around the Tokyo Game Show time, is we're also seeing a lot of rumors that the PS5 Slim is coming this year, believe it or not, already. And I'm thinking if you're trying to release that before holiday this year, the best place to announce that would probably be towards the end of August or mid-September, hence Tokyo Game Show. So that's what I'm putting my dart on, is Tokyo Game Show for the announcement of the PS5 Slim, and maybe also a Nintendo Direct. But this is all speculation, to be clear. And the last story I just want to touch on real quick is that apparently gaming handhelds, and not just gaming handhelds, but like all electronic personal devices, so that includes cell phones, are going to have replaceable batteries in the EU by 2027. And this is like user replaceable batteries. Now that doesn't really mean a lot right now. I mean, that's, 40 years away just about, but I am curious to see a world in which like the iPhone has to have a user replaceable battery instead of just looking at the battery health and being like, well, that like 40%, guess it's time to buy a whole new iPhone. Same thing with the Switch. I think that's kind of exciting. Honestly, shout out to the European Council for that ruling. Also, like the USB-C ruling that all personal devices have to be charged with the same cable. In this case, USB-C, which is probably the reason that the iPhone is going to have a USB-C port this year. I just think all of that stuff is good. I think it's going to reduce tech waste, which is a huge deal. But I also just think it makes things more affordable for everybody. The idea that you would go get whatever the new Switch is, and then it would die because the battery would die faster than it should have, and then you'd have to get rid of that whole thing, throw it out, and then buy a new one is a bummer when you could instead just replace the battery like we used to be able to do in flip phones in the early 2000s. And that's what this is all about for me. It's about getting back to the flip phones of the early 2000s, because I am a living, breathing stereotype. Anyway, that's going to be it for me. Thank you so much for watching or listening to this episode of Wavelengths. Please share the show with a friend. Please like, comment, subscribe if you're on YouTube. Please leave a review on Apple Podcasts, comment on Spotify, all of the above. But as always, sharing it with a friend is definitely the best way to help it grow. And I would love if it did. Bye-bye.